Picture this, it's the year 1258, and the Tigris River, the lifeblood of the greatest city on earth, is said to be running black with the ink of countless annihilated books and red with the blood of its people. This is the story of how Baghdad, a city at the very center of a golden age, was devastated in a matter of days. Its ruler, a caliph who believed his city was protected by God himself, made a fatal mistake that invited utter destruction. So, what was it? What happened? For 500 years, one city stood as the heart of the Islamic world, Baghdad. Founded by the Abbasid Caliphate, it was a jewel of civilization, a bustling metropolis where science, philosophy, and art flourished. Its libraries, most famously the House of Wisdom, were legendary. These weren't just dusty warehouses for books, they were vibrant hubs of learning where scholars from across the known world translated and expanded on the knowledge of ancient Greece, Persia, and India. This was the Islamic Golden Age, and Baghdad was its sun. At the center of this world sat the 37th Abbasid Caliph, al-Mustasim Billah. He was the spiritual leader of millions. But in truth, the caliphate's power had been fading for centuries. Al-Musta'sim is often described as a ruler surrounded by conflicting advisors, who possessed a dangerous sense of security. He believed the half-a-millennium prestige of Baghdad, the seat of the caliphate, made it untouchable. He assumed that no army would dare strike at the heart of Islam, fearing divine retribution and an uprising of the entire Muslim world. This was a fatal miscalculation. Because far to the east, a storm was gathering. An empire built on speed, terror, and relentless conquest was on the move. The Mongol Empire, founded by Genghis Khan, had already carved a path of destruction across Asia. In 1251, the great Khan monk gave his brother, Hulagu Khan, a mission: ride west and secure Persia and Mesopotamia. Hulagu was a brilliant and ruthless commander, and he marched with what may have been the largest Mongol army ever assembled, a force estimated between 120,000 and 150,000 men. Their first targets were the mountain fortresses of the Nizari Ismaili, also known as the Assassins, which they systematically dismantled in 1256. With that threat gone, Hulagu turned his eyes toward his ultimate prize, Baghdad. Hulagu Khan didn't arrive unannounced. The Mongols operated on a simple, brutal principle: submit or be destroyed. In 1257, envoys brought an ultimatum to Baghdad, demanding that Caliph al-Mustasim send troops to support the Mongol campaigns and acknowledge their authority. The Caliph had agreed to a similar request before but, swayed by his ministers, never actually sent the soldiers. This time, al-Mustasim's response was one of staggering arrogance. He refused the demand, firing back with empty threats. He reportedly called the Mongol leader young and ignorant, boasting that he could summon armies from across the Islamic world to defend his city. It was a disastrous bluff. The Caliph's treasury remained shut, and his own army, maybe 50,000 soldiers strong, was neglected and unprepared. For Hulagu, this defiance was all the justification he needed. The time for talk was over. The Mongol war machine moved with terrifying efficiency, dividing its forces to surround Baghdad from multiple directions. The Caliph's army made one desperate attempt to stop them. A force of 20,000 soldiers rode out to meet a Mongol contingent. After some initial success, they were lured into a trap. Mongol engineers broke the dikes of nearby canals, flooding the Abbasid camp overnight. Many soldiers drowned, and the survivors were slaughtered the next morning. The last line of defense outside the city walls was gone. By late January 1258, the greatest city in the world was completely surrounded. The siege of Baghdad began on January 29, 1258. Hulagu's massive army, made up of Mongol, Chinese, Persian, and Christian troops, brought the most advanced siege technology of the day. They built a barricade and ditch around the city and began a relentless bombardment with powerful catapults. Inside the city, panic set in. The Caliph, finally grasping the mortal danger he was in, desperately tried to negotiate. He offered to have Hulagu's name mentioned in Friday prayers and grant him the title of Sultan. But it was far too late. For the Mongols, an offer to surrender was made only once. To refuse and then try to bargain after the fighting started was a sign of weakness to be punished, not rewarded. The city's defenders fought from the walls, but they were no match for the disciplined, battle-hardened Mongol forces. By February 5, less than a week into the siege, a section of the eastern wall was breached. Realizing all was lost, Caliph al-Mustasim made one final plea. On February 10, he, his sons, and about 3,000 of the city's leaders marched out and surrendered to Hulagu. Hulagu then made a chilling demand. He told the Caliph to order the entire population to disarm and exit the city for a census. Those who obeyed, likely hoping for mercy, were instead met by Mongol swords. They were divided into groups and systematically executed. The trap was sprung. On February 13, 1258, the Mongol army was unleashed on Baghdad. What followed was a week-long massacre of unimaginable scale. The Mongols swept through the city, killing, looting, and burning. No one was safe. Men, women, and children were slaughtered in the streets and in their homes. While some of the city's Nestorian Christians were spared, thanks to the influence of Hulagu's mother and wife who were both of the faith, the vast majority of the population was annihilated. Modern estimates of the death toll range from around 90,000 to 200,000, though some contemporary accounts claimed much higher, likely exaggerated numbers. The physical destruction was just as staggering. Palaces, mosques, and hospitals that had stood for centuries were demolished. The city's great libraries, filled with 500 years of knowledge, were systematically destroyed. Countless priceless manuscripts on science, medicine, and philosophy were lost forever. The story goes that books from the House of Wisdom were thrown into the Tigris, and so many were destroyed that the river ran black with their ink, a haunting symbol of cultural devastation. And what about the Caliph, whose pride brought this apocalypse upon his city? Al-Mustasim was executed a few days after the surrender. There are several accounts of his death, but the most famous, and perhaps apocryphal, one holds that Mongol tradition forbade spilling royal blood on the earth. So, the Caliph was wrapped in a carpet and trampled to death by horses, a brutal and humiliating end for the last Abbasid ruler of Baghdad. The fall of Baghdad was a cataclysmic event that sent shockwaves across the world. It marked the definitive end of the Abbasid Caliphate's 5-century reign and is traditionally seen as the closing chapter of the Islamic Golden Age. The political and cultural center of the Islamic world had been shattered. In the aftermath, Hulagu Khan established the Ilkhanate, a Mongol state that would rule over Persia and Iraq for decades. Though Baghdad was eventually rebuilt, it never returned to its former glory. The center of Middle Eastern power shifted away from the old Arab capital. The Siege of Baghdad is a brutal history lesson. It's a story about the terrifying power of the Mongol war machine, but it's also a story of hubris. It shows how a leader, blinded by pride and a false sense of invincibility, can misjudge a threat with catastrophic consequences. The Caliph believed his city was eternal. Hulagu Khan proved that nothing is untouchable, and even the brightest golden ages can be extinguished. But in a final, ironic twist of history, the conquerors were themselves conquered. Over generations, the Mongol rulers of the Ilkhanate converted to Islam, the religion of the people they had subjugated. They became patrons of a new, Persian-influenced Islamic culture. The empire of the caliphs was gone, but the civilization it nurtured endured, adapted, and ultimately transformed its destroyers. The story of Baghdad is a powerful reminder of how quickly history can turn. If you found this insightful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories from our past. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What other historical event do you think represents a major turning point in world history? Thanks for watching.